to everybody who's standing up right now. And please empty the stage area as well, so all our viewers, listeners, our guests can have a good look towards the author and the guests.
Ex-Ambassador Ashok Kant is a former career diplomat who served as secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs and as the ambassador to China, Sri Lanka and Malaysia. He is currently Subhash Chandra Bose Chair Professor of International Relations at the Chanakya University. Mr. Kant is also a distinguished fellow at Vivekananda International Foundation and chair of the core group on China at CII. Lieutenant General S.L. Narasimhan is a retired infantry officer with over 40 years of service in the Indian Army. He served as defense attaché in China, is qualified in Chinese and has been a member of the National Security Advisory Board and is the first Director General of the Center for Contemporary China Studies. He is currently an adjunct distinguished fellow at Gateway House, non-resident senior associate at CSIS, Washington, D.C.
And as the moderator for this session, we are delighted to have Ambreen Khan ji with us. She is a media marketing and communications expert and an adjunct professor of media studies at MCRC, Jamia Millia Islamia and the Jindal Global University. She is currently the head of communications at the Indian Express and also serves as a marketing advisor to the Taj Hotels. Passionate about promoting Indian art and culture, she curates events that bridge media, culture and public disclosure. I believe उनके moderation से ये discussion sharp, structured और insightful रहेगा. Complex topics को हम आसानी से समझ पाएंगे. And I'll be requesting Ambreen ji to please begin the session. एक बार तालियां होनी चाहिए हमारे सभी guest authors के लिए.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. As you mentioned, that it's a very complex topic, but complex makes life more interesting. Huh? So does that mean China makes us more, makes the diplomats and the military generals more interesting? Huh? And to do exactly what we should do in 50 minutes, how do you unlock complexity and make it more interesting is my role today. Now, when you sit between two super experts on China, very complex matters and very complex issues, how do we make it little less academic and make it more interesting? So my first question is little less academic but relevant, which comes from my husband who's serving right now in Ladakh as the Chief Secretary, and he's visiting Kargil just now. So his first question, he said, "Meri taraf se ek sawal zarur puchna," which I must share and ask both of you, that how difficult is life of a soldier who's serving right on the top, whether the border is here or border on that side? That's my first question to you, which I represent. Please, please.
First of all, thank you very much for Raghav Chandraji and others, Sanjay precisely to have got me here. The life of a soldier, if you look at it, I mean, contrary to the belief that you have, because of the kind of training and the camaraderie and the support that he gets, we tend to make him forget the difficulties of the service that he has to do in those areas. The way that we do it is quite unlike the civilian side and the industry. Basically, to have a homogeneous, well-knit kind of an organization which will stand in for any kind of requirements of his whenever he is deployed there, how his family is taken care of, all those things put his mind to rest on the other issues that actually bother him. And he starts concentrating on the job that he has to do. So while physically it is tough, in the sense if you are sitting at minus 30 degrees trying to give a sentry duty for 2 hours, you are frozen. In Siachen, it is just about half an hour, because beyond half an hour, you can't stand in that cold. But what makes him go through all this is the kind of camaraderie that we build in the units and the formations. That helps him both mentally and physically to sustain himself out there. So from that angle, if you see, I think it is not so difficult.
Well done. And big round of applause for people who serve this country sitting on the borders. And Lieutenant General Narasimhan himself has served for 12 years on the border. So kudos to you all that you keep us warm and comfortable here and lead a very, very difficult life. So thank you from everybody's side. And the second question, okay, is also a representative of the border. Question is that how, as a diplomat, and I know that Mr. Akbaruddin is also sitting here, who's done a very good job, and he was the spokesperson for military for the MEA. My question to you is, Ambassador, how do you handle pressure as a diplomat? When you have complex China on one side, equally complex India on this side, how do you navigate your every little thing, whether it's the border tension or it's definitely, diplomatic relationships, and certainly between China and India, you have a situation of high trade going on. What exactly, just as an independent, not right now as an ambassador to China, a former ambassador to China, but purely as a diplomat, क्या आप करते हैं, क्या सोचते हैं, what is your modus operandi? Tell us about that.
Well, let me also begin by thanking Raghav, Sanjay, and other colleagues at BLF for inviting me and for joining this conversation with General Narasimhan, an old friend, and Ambreen. Ambreen, before I come to your question, let me add something to what General Narasimhan said. Whatever he said was perfectly fine. I had the privilege during my diplomatic career of working very closely with armed forces, because largely by choice, partly by circumstances, I was dealing with countries like China, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal for extended period, which involved working very closely with armed forces. So I can tell you, we have the finest army in the world, finest armed force in the world. But circumstances under which they operate, difficulty should not be underestimated, especially at this point of time. You're all aware of the fact that in summer of 2020, Chinese PLA made multiple transgressions across line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. They brought in fairly large number of troops, and we matched very quickly by counter-deploying troops. And that situation hasn't changed. In eastern Ladakh and along other sectors of India-China line of actual control, we have ongoing high deployment. So we are today in a situation where, apart from dealing with Pakistan, front border, which, as you know, we discussed yesterday, Op Sindoor, complexities involved there, we have fairly high deployment along the borders with China. This has led to situations where, for instance, peacetime postings, they don't want to talk about these things, but someone should talk about these things, get really reduced. And these are very important. You are in high pressure situation when you're dealing with adversaries like China and Pakistan day in and day out. And China, they continuously try to probe your defenses. They try to see what are the chinks where they can make some incremental gains. So it's a really, higher tension situation they have to deal with. We should not underestimate that. Now coming to your question, Ambreen, You know, as a diplomat, like in any other profession, first thing is to prepare yourself. You need to know, if I'm dealing with China, you know, it's very important to understand how the Chinese mind works, what makes them tick. So in case of China, at least, we tend to do some specialization. Just to give you my example, I've done 3 stints in China, including the ambassador. First assignment dates back to 1981, before most of youngsters here were born. I spent long years at headquarters working on China. And I'm not, you know, I'm not an outlier. There are a whole lot of people like me who have devoted their career, because you need to understand. You need to understand the China challenge. I don't want to call it adversary, because no, that becomes sort of wish fulfilling. But need for us to look at our largest neighbor, which is today and is going to be our #1 strategic challenge in foreseeable future. There's no doubt about it. You know, we can't just depend on how Western countries look at China. In fact, they keep making mistakes all the time. You know, just to give you one example, recently, President Trump, you know, announced tariff of 145% on imports from China. He thought China will buckle under, and he'll have a deal soon. He was in for a surprise. China retaliated so strongly that it's USA which blinked. So understanding situations, preparing for it, and doing it from a position where there are huge asymmetries between capabilities of India and China. I started in 81 where asymmetries were minimal. We are today in 2026. Their GDP is 5 times larger than ours. In terms of, you know, military prowess, they are well ahead of us. In terms of research and development, I was just looking at a report, which a technology tracker, which comes out from Australian Institute. Out of 74 technologies they track, China is ahead in 66. US is ahead in only 8. I'm giving you examples. These are the challenges. How do you understand? How do you deal with asymmetric situation? How do you keep your eye on the bottom line all the time? This is what, no, I will not accept anything which is less than that. How do you maintain your national interest? How do you maintain your personal and national dignity? So it's an ongoing challenge for a diplomat, but I think our diplomats have done fairly well.
Okay, I'm sure. Now, just before we move into a very specific China, a conversation, I want to ask both of you one question, and I'll request both of you to keep it slightly brief so that we can move into a bit more academic. So my question is that China claims and China believes and China is aiming, and they will, the way they are. I have also been a consultant with a company like Huawei. So I've worked very closely with the Chinese. So I know exactly how they operate, and I've worked with them for 4 years when Ambassador Jaishankar used to be our ambassador in Beijing. So my question to both of you is that China wants to be the world leader. They are not considered as the world leader, but they want to be the ultimate world leader in 2049. India wants to be and achieve Viksit Bharat in 47. How do you see, and do you see how achievable it is? And do you think that that we are competing, if we are competing with them, and where do we stand today?
This is a very important question, Ambreen, because this is going to be one of the fundamental questions shaping, future of Asia and beyond. Because here we have a situation of simultaneous re-emergence of 2 civilizations, which were historically the leading civilization in the world. There are a lot of studies which show that around 17 AD, India was the largest economy in the world, followed by China. That situation changed because of colonial period and inability of India and China to keep abreast of technology. Now, China, as you mentioned, has a narrative that the historical norm is China as the preeminent power in the world. They would like to start as the preeminent power in Asia, and eventually by 2049 they would like to become preeminent power in the world. That may not happen, but as part of that, how do they accommodate simultaneous rise of India? I think that's a big question. The feeling we get is that they're not willing to accommodate that. They're not willing to give us space. We are not seeking, sort of hegemony. We are not seeking number one status either in Asia or the world. But they're not even willing to concede a multipolar Asia.
So does that mean that they are the hardest negotiators?
I will not say, as negotiators, we will not say that we are less, forceful than the Chinese. But they have a certain narrative. They have persuaded themselves that this is their future. Unfortunately, a whole lot of people outside China often buy into that narrative, which is only partly based on facts.
And as a military man, do you think that they are very hard negotiators? And what is it that we need to be equally hard as negotiators?
Two things. One is the first question that you answered, and the second one is on the negotiation part. On the first one, I think they have set themselves for a goal of 2049 to become a world leading power in the world. And in that, they have got certain kind of breakdowns. They want to have the most powerful military by 2049, which can win wars all over the world. That is stated. I'm not saying anything on my own. It is stated by Xi Jinping and others, and it is recorded. The other thing that you brought out is about the 2047 Viksit Bharat. The problem arises the moment you start comparing both. Because Viksit Bharat does not have the kind of aim which the Chinese have set for themselves in 2049. Viksit Bharat typically says we want to become a developed nation. We are not looking for an increased role anywhere, a military kind of a role or hegemonism. We are not looking at that. So therefore, there is a difference in the way both Chinese look at it and we look at it. Having said that, there is a problem there because when we want to develop to that level, and China also wants to develop to that level, you have a conflict of interest coming up in various places in the world. And that is where the competition is going to start increasing. So if you plot it on the world map, there are 7 areas you can plot really, all east of Atlantic, basically falling into this common kind of a competition. You look at Africa, Europe, ASEAN, Pacific Island countries, Central Asian republics, South Asia, all these countries. If you look at it, these groups of countries is the way the competition is going to build up. So we need to be prepared for it, and I am sure the government is already working on it to be prepared for it. That is one aspect. That puts the China-India relationship in a question mark. Because if you say that, 15 years ago, if you had asked me, I would have said, resolve the boundary question, everything become all right. I'm not so sure anymore. Because of the kind of competition that you're going to get into in future till 2047, that is something that you need to be looking at. So if you look at 2049 and 2047 as the target years, then we are going to be in for an increased competition in and around us, not only in and around us, across the world, wherever this competition is going to take you. So that is the way we need to think about it and then plan for it. Coming on to your second question of how to negotiate or how to become, we are already hard negotiators. He has been one, we have been one. The thing is, this is what I have learned over a period of time. I'm sure Ambassador Kantha will bear me out on this. If you want to negotiate with the Chinese, you have to do 2-3 things. One, you need to be prepared well, as he mentioned. You should know the entire background of the issue that you're going to discuss with them. They come with a lot of institutional knowledge, institutional memory. So we need to have that institutional memory. That is number one. Number two, dig your heels. You need to dig your heels in case you need to negotiate with Chinese or for that matter with anybody, but with Chinese more. And the reason why I say this is Chinese respect strength. Chinese respects your own strength. If you negotiate with them from a position of weakness, then you are going to be getting into a bit of an issue. So therefore, you need to prepare yourself well, know the case well, know your position well, where you need to draw a line well, and then stick to it.
Dig in your heels. So one question, why this topic of India-China is so relevant? You know, and it just does not for every household, everybody, each household, every human being is interested in China. So is it China that do we fear China? That's question number one. If we do, we saw in last year, 25 was only about thawing. We thought that the relationships were settling down, and then we see a lot of U-turns, okay, if I may say so. I'm not an expert on China. I'm not an expert on external affairs, but I, as obsessive I am, not with the US, but with the Chinese, I want to understand from both of you that 25 was very focused, hard focus was only on sorting out the relationship, as they say, thawing the relationship, and now is on early harvest. What are the hard issues you think that now, being futuristic, we should focus on as a military general and yourself as a diplomat? What would be your advice to the government, to the diplomats, what to focus on and how to align that focus?
You know, you rightly pointed out that last year focus was on essentially ensuring that borders became once again stable and extricating ourselves from a very messy situation Chinese had created by violating all agreements on CBMs we had signed with them. What they did was completely brazen, it was completely unacceptable, and very clear message that was conveyed from our side that, look here, you know, unless peace and tranquility is restored in border areas, there's no way we can look at normalization of relations or even moving in that direction. So first order of business was disengagement of troops, which was more or less achieved. Only then we could start the process of step-by-step normalization of relations. This is actually very calibrated process from our side, whereas Chinese would like us to, you know, pretend that border issue doesn't exist. Let's go ahead developing our relations elsewhere. We tell them, no, buddy, we cannot do that, because border issue remains a very major concern from us, even though disengagement has been largely, though not entirely, achieved. As I mentioned earlier, there is still very high level of deployment of troops. So border areas is stable but not normal. So we need to deal with that. It's a very risky situation we have in border areas. Now, secondly, how do we calibrate this process of normalization of relations? We have different views. We are moving with baby steps, and rightly so. We don't want to make haste. We don't want any reset of relations. We would like certain structural problems in the relationship to be addressed. And those problems keep manifesting all the time. You know, yesterday we were talking about Op Sindoor, one issue which didn't come up yesterday. Narasimhan can talk about it. But we saw a pattern of behavior on part of China during that 87-hour conflict, which was unprecedented, where they were providing operational support to Pakistan, not only, you know, in a battlefield, but in terms of amplification of Pakistan's propaganda worldwide. In battlefield, in fact, one can call it battlefield collusion. It was so extensive. So this is not signal coming from a friendly country. I can give you a whole lot of examples, but none of those structural problems, ranging from border issue to the fact that last year we had trade deficit $110 billion, to the fact that they're building a mega hydropower project just 40 kilometers from a border, which will have major impact on us, to the fact that, you know, what we discussed earlier, they're not willing to look at India as a peer or near peer nation. In fact, assessment we make is that they do their best to sort of slow down rise of India, keep us down. So these are fundamental problems we have, and as Narasimhan brought out, looking ahead, whether we look up to 47, Viksit Bharat goal, or 49, what they call Great Rejuvenation or Chinese Nation goal, this will continue.
So, according to you, this normalcy is not yet set in, and we are saying that the borders are still disputed. And if I may ask you another question, and then you can share with us your insight. The other critical question is that there is a mechanism in place for border management, and recently we read and we follow and we hear from experts on borders. The critical question is that there is a border. How effective basically is the new border management mechanism? Okay, what is it that we are doing to kind of avoid or calibrate the deterrence? Take us through that.
You see, if you look at particularly the line of what we call as line of actual control, which is actually supposed to be the boundary with, at the moment, the working kind of a alignment that we have, it is not marked on ground. The first point we need to understand is it is not marked on ground with pillars or any kind of line, nothing. It is just if you go there, you will just see a piece of land. It is for you to, where the line of actual control is, and then he will start imposing his own perception of the line of actual control in some form somewhere. So what we have already resolved is, we have done a number of agreements with China on this. We are all aware of it. I don't want to reiterate for the sake of time. But physically on the ground, you have a number of procedures. Like for example, two patrols come face to face. Then what is the procedure that the patrols have to adopt is decided between both the sides. And the moment you meet the patrol, then you show a banner showing that this is Indian territory, please go back. So then once they agree, then you go back one bound and he goes back another bound, and then you say that, we'll resolve it with our people at the back. Okay. There are a number of drills like this which have already been tied down. So which is being in use, and the problem comes up when one side, mostly it has been the Chinese side, when they don't agree or follow these standard operating procedures that have been laid down. Then it starts escalating. And once it starts escalating, then the power of the tactical commander to get into decision making gets taken away. Then it goes to the Beijing as well as Delhi to start reacting to it. Okay, that is one issue. The second issue is, of late, you find when 2020 happened, we have a temporary moratorium on patrolling in certain areas, which is another way of managing the border. Like for example, you don't have a common understanding of a line on a particular place. Then you say, okay, you stay there, I stay here, we don't come in between. It's a temporary moratorium on patrolling. So that is something which is there in a couple of places, in fact 4 places. Then you also have some kind of an arrangement of coordinated patrolling. Like the day I come, I inform him, he doesn't come. The day he comes, then I don't go, so that the face-offs cannot increase. So there are many mechanisms that have been worked out. In addition to that, there are also local kind of, you have the flag meetings. If something goes wrong, you call for a flag meeting at fixed places. Then you sort it out. Then you have border personal meetings, where it's on a fixed kind of dates, you meet the other side and then discuss the issues with them. So there are many such mechanisms which are already in place. But the problem comes up when these mechanisms don't work at some point.
No, but why doesn't it work? And then my following question would be, when they say कि अच्छा आप Chinese अरुणाचल में घुस आए हैं, अब ये उधर से आ रहे हैं, तो ये आते हैं तो हम इनको कहाँ तक रोक पाते हैं और क्या reality होती है? It will be good for all of us to understand that and can't get better than yourself.
आपको याद होगा दिसंबर 2022 में ज़्यादातर चाइना की ट्रूप्स जो हैं वो यांगसे के एरिया में आए थे. क्या वो घुस पाए हमारे इलाके में?
पर जगह घेरते तो हैं ना.
ना जगह ऐसे नहीं
See,
गिरते.
this is all perception. I'm also part.
Jaga-
I would sit across and I'll ask that question.
ऐसा नहीं गिरते, हम उसको गिरने नहीं देते. Because they came with more than 600 to 700 troops in that occasion. We were prepared for it and we didn't allow them even to come in 1 inch. So in places like this, when the kind of push takes place from the Chinese side, you remain prepared to take care of that. That is our job. So when you say that, you get to listen, a lot of things you'll get to listen. Paper mein, in every 3 to 4 months, you'll get to listen, Brahmaputra mein pani kam ho gaya, Brahmaputra mein pani kala ho gaya, whole lot of things you'll get to hear. But I think you all need to do a lot more research to understand what exactly it is. So you get to hear a lot of things, which is fine, which should be there, but also you all need to do a lot more research to get to the bottom of it, to see as to where the truth is.
So do you think 1993's the agreement that we had for peace and tranquility, has it deviated to some extent? Agar hai deviated, to what extent has it deviated?
See,
I want you to speak from your heart.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking an official position. He is also not speaking an official position. Okay.
I'm going to ask him a
We have-
diplomatic
we have
question.
left the
which,
government long time ago. No, the point is this. These agreements did have an implication and an importance. 1993 and 96, he was there negotiating those agreements. So he may throw more light on this. So these agreements brought in a sense of stability along the line of actual control. That is something that we need to keep in mind and we need to understand it very clearly. However, the point which, not only that, then you signed 1996 confidence building measures, then you signed 2005 political parameters and guiding principles for resolution of the boundary question, then you signed border defense and cooperation agreement in 2013. So all these agreements do have an importance and they bring stability along the line of actual control. The only problem is what I mentioned to you. If one side agrees to violate any of those principles and any of those standard operating procedures that we have agreed upon mutually, then the problem comes up. Then the agreements lose their value. So the question, again, what we need to ask for is, should we go for another agreement? Should we then tweak these standard operating procedures? I would say if these 4 agreements which have been signed have been violated in some form or the other and they are not holding good, another one also will not make good. So therefore, I think what we need to do is to actually tweak these agreements to an extent that the violations can be taken care of in some form. Not with 100% surety. It will take, again, both the sides have to agree and it's an ongoing kind of a process. My own understanding is that we need to tighten these agreements and studies have been done. Let me tell you that also. Studies have been done to do that. I am sure the government will take a call on whenever they need to take that call. But the fact of the matter is that this is the way to go and ensure that such things do not happen on the line of actual control. But again, it will take 2 hands to clap.
Which hand is harder?
Can I come in on
Yes,
this?
absolutely.
Let me answer that question in
Yeah.
one line.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
yeah.
I insist on that.
I know, I
Yeah.
know that you are insisting on it.
Yeah.
For this audience, let me tell you, our hand will always be harder.
As we say, inshallah.
I fully agree with everything, Narasimhan has said. In fact, very often we are together in discussions and we seem to complete each other's sentences because we have fairly similar, approach on these issues. But if I could just, step back a little bit and mention a couple of things just for audience to understand border issue better. We have 6 formal agreements with China on border related issues. I happen to be lead negotiator for 3 of them, so I have been involved with this process quite a bit. We work on the assumption that China will act in bad faith, and they have consistently doing it. Going back to 50s, they gave one set of line in Western sector. 56, they expanded in 1960. We had certain interpretation of that line. We thought that's the claim line in Western sector, and they have come up to that claim line. We found in 2020 that no, they want to go beyond that, and they made a very determined effort to change the status quo. Even with that, they're not satisfied. I was in a track 2 or track 1.5 conversation recently, where a colleague retired off from PLA who is very sort of well respected, he told me that no, we haven't yet reached our claim line in Western sector. Keeping open the possibility of further ingress. This brings me to a fundamental problem we have with China. They want to maintain ambiguity on line of actual control because their basic approach is to keep changing the line through incremental gains, which is sometimes called gray zone operations, which they have deployed elsewhere also. Don't go into an outright military conflict, keep nibbling little bit, see how much you can control. That becomes a new normal, nibble little bit more. So you are dealing with a country which uses ambiguity as a pressure point, as an opportunity, and which is not interested either in clarifying line of actual control or settling the boundary question. So we have a serious problem there. Only answer for us is to have effective asymmetrical deterrence so that we can prevent them from changing the status quo. Signing any number of agreements will not help. In fact, it's meaningless adding more agreements. We need to strengthen our deterrence on the ground, which cannot only be defensive in character. A very important aspect of deterrence looking ahead will be that if you come in this area, I can embarrass you by going inside in some of the areas, which is sometimes called quid pro quo operation. So this is, the border management is a tricky subject, but at one level it's very simple.
Okay, so from border management, we move to diplomatic relations now. So diplomatic relations with China, as again, followed by what we read, we follow, and definitely your pieces that you constantly write for our paper, the Indian Express, or with Hindustan Times, and your last piece. I want to understand that Prime Minister Modi visited the summit, right? And immediately after that meeting, lots of things opened up, including visas, direct flights. I remember I used to travel to China, I used to take a direct flight, and then everything got shut. And then suddenly there was a change last year. So the year of thawing was that open this, and add and expand Kailash Mansarovar's, pilgrimages, and the numbers also increased and everything. Then suddenly again the deficit of trust. Why does this happen constantly? And as in reality, what is it? Where do we stand in our relationships? How do we navigate this relationship better? Tell us about that. How could we get better in what we are doing and not, is there any way we can eliminate this deficit of faith and trust that we constantly deal with as Indians?
No, my short answer to that is no. We are unlikely to get over deficit of trust with China because mistrust, distrust is deep-rooted, and it emerges out of a pattern of behavior on part of China, and also a certain conflict in our interests. We would not like China to become the top dog in Asia, or let alone the world, and that's what they want to achieve. They have a hierarchy of nations where they'll be, the preeminent power, and we must, settle for a subaltern role, a sort of junior partner's role. We also have certain sense of history and a sense of our destiny. Will not accept it. So it will continue. Distrust will continue. It's a given. Within that, we have to manage this relationship. So one given is that it's a fraught, difficult, challenging relationship. That fact will not change. We have to accept it. Now you are referring to certain steps we took. We had made it very clear that we must have disengagement in borders, relative peace and tranquility in borders. before resume the process of normalization relations. Dr. Jayashankar had given a very important statement in Parliament on 3rd and 4th December, 2023, where he had 2024, sorry, 2024, where he had spelt out that primary preoccupation is border, but if that's taken care of, we will make some, soft incremental gains, and these changes will be mainly people-centric contacts. So this is what we are doing. They have resumed Yatra to Kailash Mansarovar. We have liberalized visa procedures to some extent, direct flights, though it's still very, very difficult flying to China. But we are in no hurry to return to some kind of status quo ante as of say April 2020. Because they are not restoring a status quo ante as of April 2020. We still have a difficult and challenging situation. Looking ahead, Ambreen, if I could put it in a slightly bigger perspective, just for our friends in the audience to understand, article she is referring to, I have been writing that in many ways the task of navigating our relations with China has become more difficult. It has become more difficult because changes, you're all aware, that have taken in international, geopolitical situation, where you have Mr. Trump with his disruptive behavior. But there are two aspects of behavior that have a very direct bearing on how we deal with China. One, the way he has reached, dealt with India, not very respectful, where you're all aware of kind of negative signals we have got. But there's another aspect which is even more disturbing. That is, in his strategic calculus, India's significance as a sort of counterbalance to China has gone down quite a bit, and Chinese are aware of that. Now, second thing which has happened, his whole stance towards China has changed. Compared to his own stance in 2017, when they have issued national security strategy, or Biden administration's stance, they are looking at China more like as an economic competitor, rather a systemic rival. I'm sorry, I'm using these, sort of these words. But today, they're looking at Western Hemisphere as their primary theater. Look at what they're doing in Venezuela. They are de-emphasizing Asia-Pacific or Indo-Pacific. Again, Chinese are aware of that. And Chinese have also convinced themselves two things. One, that India has become less important in scheme of things. And two, India is seeking better relations with China today from a position of vulnerability. Because we are facing these problems with USA, we are under stress, so we are seeking better relations. As Narasimhan said, one thing the Chinese respect more than anything else is strength. So when you deal with China from position of perceived weakness or vulnerability, you have to be extremely careful. That's what I have been advising, that this situation needs to be tackled very carefully. We must show strategic patience. We cannot allow our basic interests to be undermined just to show some progress in relations with China, or for that matter, even USA.
Okay, my question is now to Lieutenant General. Narasimhan, I wanted to ask you that we started off with very complex China and our relationship. So yes, it's a relationship of cautious, it's a relationship of stress, it's a relationship of tact, right? We need all of that. But my question, is it that bilateral, okay, the larger economic piece is more predominant, is more relevant? That's the reason why the other issues, whether it's diplomatic relations or the military situation of the borders, it's taken a back seat. Suddenly there's more importance on ke dhanda karo inke saath, And if you do that work, that dhanda with them, rest of the things. So is it something you have to tell us now, straightforwardly, are there some things which have been thrown under the carpet because the relationship matters more? Because you have the US tariffs issues and you have administration of Trump issues. So tell us that. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, it's an absolute privilege. These two gentlemen are not only experts on China, but they are public commentators. So they take a lot of responsibility of what they say. So it'll be great to hear from them, not the academic only, but insights that they should be sharing with us today.
This seems to be pressure equivalent to the Chinese pressure, right?
We use a lot of Chinese products every day.
Okay, two things I like to say before I answer Ambreen's question. One is, we have been insisting on three mutuals. Our foreign minister has been very steadily saying this: mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual interest. I can talk about it later if somebody wants to know that. That is the underlining factor governing this relationship between India and China. That is one thing that we need to be very clear about. Second thing, just because certain things which are economic are coming to the forefront does not mean the others have been swept under the carpet. That is a point I want to convey to this audience very clearly. There is no compromise on anything. At least we are not compromising on the boundary or any other issue when we are negotiating with the Chinese. That is one point. Second point, there are certain industries, certain industries for which we are critically dependent on China. Like, for example, active pharma ingredients, power equipment, solar equipment, automobile spare parts, electronic equipment, engineering, machinery, like, for example, tunnel boring machines, rare earth materials for your batteries. In all this, we are critically dependent on China. It's no secret. I'm not telling any secret to anybody. You just go to the net, you will find all this. Okay? Therefore, there is a necessity to do this in some manner which is also beneficial to us. That is the way you need to see this certain amount of relaxation that is being talked about. Having said that, please note there is a press note 3 which was announced in April 2020 before the Galwan incident, which said any investment from the India's neighborhood will go through the government approval route, and that has not been rescinded. There is pressure on it to be rescinded. A lot of recommendations have been worked on. We'll see how that gets modified or whatever, but at the moment it holds good. So while we say that we want to improve things, and we have not stopped anything from China, by the way. Even when this press note 3 was effective from April 2020, approximately more than 300 applications from Chinese were received, out of which 117 have been approved. Some of them are under consideration, some of them have been rejected. The basic thing is we are looking at what is good for us, and we should do business in those particular places.
So I've already got the signal to, we will take 4 questions from the audiences if you have the time.
Yeah.
We
I mean,
must.
if I could just add a
Sure.
So,
little bit on that.
very briefly,
very
because he's a
briefly.
hard taskmaster.
Yeah,
He's a hard
yeah.
negotiator. So
No, I know. I've been watching him in action, and it's good to have someone
I
like
have
him.
to, I'll lose my job otherwise.
You
Yes,
know,
sir.
on your basic question, can we sort of disentangle our overall relations from economic engagement? No, we cannot, because there's no way you can take out security concerns, the geopolitical concerns with China from economic engagement. But we'll continue to trade. As General Narasimhan said, 2 aspects I just wanted to highlight for you. Then you should understand why even economic engagement is not sort of routine business. We have figures for last year, Chinese data. First 11 months of last year, our trade deficit with China was $105 billion. Our total exports to China was $17.5 billion. It's completely out of balance trade. More important is what General Narasimhan has referred to. Chinese learning from Americans have weaponized interdependence. They have an elaborate regime for that. and they're deploying it effectively against us. In recent months, they stopped selling rare earth magnets to us, which are very important. Many of you are aware. They stopped selling tunnel boring machines, which are very important for border infrastructure. They stopped selling many other critical items. So they can, they use these things as pressure points. So we need to reduce our dependencies on China. This is what China has done vis-a-vis USA. And in fact, here we need to learn from them.
The questions now reduced to 3. We'll come to, but we have missed out on geopolitics. We've missed out on many other questions which you could raise, but we would definitely like to take one young, very young, everyone's young, but especially, like a school-going child, because I saw there was a gentleman yesterday sitting there. He must have got at least out of the entire quiz, he must have got 7 answers right. So would love to get you to answer or ask one question. What's your name? Dhruv? Huh?
Please pass
Please
on the
give
mic to him.
because he's very well researched. Tejas, yeah.
Well, thank you for the compliment, and I don't have a question prepared.
But what worries you, or how hopeful are you about Indo-China relationship?
So this question is addressed both to the ambassador and to Lieutenant General Narasimhan. And in the event of a war, will this huge trade deficit and the amount of dependence we have on the Chinese for component goods have any impact? And if so, since the trade deficit is so large, running into the hundreds of billions, would the impact not be devastating?
This is a very good question. First we need to understand, you referred to a state of war between India and China. This war will be very different from what we think. It will not be fought only along the front line. It will be what is called multimodal warfare. So we will be subjected to attacks in cyber domain. They will subject us to attack in vulnerabilities you are referring to. It's a given. Even in trade contestation with USA, why USA blinked? The main reason USA blinked because China had a choke point on something called rare earth magnets. People didn't even know what is rare earth magnets. Everyone knows about it. And Americans couldn't do it without it. So they had to come down from high horses and seek a truce with China. When it comes to war situation, we'll be subjected to pressure, attack in different areas. In fact, this war may be fought without our realizing that a war is being fought. They can do things to say compromise our critical infrastructure. So it's going to be a very different kind of war.
See, just in one line, okay. Any war with any country will affect us. There's no doubt about it. What we need to be doing, which we are doing already, when you're sourcing your stuff for the military, particularly for the equipment, vehicles, etc., you are trying to do something known as sourcing them from trusted sources. Trusted sources is what we are looking at. As this progresses along, that difficulty will reduce. But difficulties will definitely be there in any kind of war.
Anybody for a geopolitical question? So
Yes, somebody in the front.
anyone from this side. So I would request you to be very brief and
Well,
yeah, but
well,
we'll have to
let's
be
do
very
one thing.
brief
One by
because
one,
we've got
we'll
time.
walk
We'll
towards
take two
all
more
the corners of the hall.
Yeah.
I'll request everybody to please keep
Sir,
your
can you
questions
just share
crisp.
your question and then we'll just club in the questions and and keep it answer together.
Thank you so much. My name is Upendra Verma.
Sir, please hold the mic closer and please increase the volumes of all the mics. Ha,
Uh,
it's on, boliye.
yeah.
So,
My question is that what I have gathered from both the speakers is that probably we are stuck in this very unpalatable situation where we will be probably number 3, number 4, I don't know, as compared to China. And China will keep us I mean, keep pinned us down for indefinite period. My question is, are we willing to accept it?
Thank you.
And one more, there is an adjunct to it.
So there are
So
plenty
we'll
of
keep
questions.
it very short because
Yeah.
we
We'll
have
reduce it to
No,
one.
my question is that shouldn't we think go for some out-of-box thinking? Is it not possible
Good question. Though.
that China, if we are willing to compromise on territorial, China, India and Russia, some access can be made. Otherwise, in this particular
Yeah.
traditional way, I think we are not going to make any progress.
Please conclude.
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you so
Thank
much. What about?
Jain sir, a burning question in my mind for both of you. First,
Can you identify yourself?
my name is Colonel Nirmal Upreti, and I am asking this question as an Indian citizen, not as a Fauji.
I know.
First is, while China has settled down all land dispute with rest of the countries, this remains one burning issue with India since long. China has proven to the entire world that they are willing to settle down the boundary issue, less India. So in that particular case, doesn't it reflect on us and China that they are willing to settle it down and we are somewhere to be blamed for dragging it so long? This is a question to Ambassador. Just would like to know the insight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Second,
Can we keep it short?
So
Because I'm going to
we are
request our
already
speakers
running
also
short
to
of
be
time.
brief.
white papers.
So you can have
We
this
need to-
conversation once we are out.
Yeah,
One
sure,
question
sure.
per
Thank
person,
you.
please.
Thank you. One more question, please.
Yeah, Hassan.
Jan, hi.
Hello. My question is, you talked about power play, that China usually admires power play. So what are the three most important power plays that we have as Indians when we talk to China? And my second is, every time when they hinder, we know that they, do we just make new standardizations, or we bring up new policies, or we really act upon it? How do we act upon it?
Excellent.
हम
What
और
about
सवाल
just
अभी ले
gentlemen,
सकते
huh?
हैं या
And
फिर
only
हम
one more
जवाब
question
सुनेंगे
from
पहले?
her, बस that's-
ठीक है.
And then we'll sum it
वहाँ
up.
पीछे से
Sum
भी एक
it
हाथ
up.
खड़ा हुआ है.
Just this
हाँ
gentleman.
ठीक है, ये आगे यहाँ पे दे दीजिए एक बार.
And then can we sum it up?
Trailing off from that gentleman's question, I'm curious about the same thing. Like, why India? Why is China not compromising with us? Or like, I don't know the details of what has been done with the other countries, but what is in this case that it's lagging behind so long? Mao fought in so many border skirmishes with many countries, the Soviet Union, Vietnam. Why is it lingering here?
Okay.
Okay, let's get to the answers और उसके बाद समय बचता है तो we might take a couple of questions.
Yeah.
General and
Yeah.
Ambassador. Yes.
Okay, let me actually begin with two questions relating to sort of why China is not compromising and how somehow we are to blame for the fact that India-China border issue has not been settled. Let me just put things in perspective here. China actually has very major ongoing border issues with several countries. It has moved to maritime domain now. With India and Bhutan, it's land border. In South China Sea, East China Sea, Taiwan Strait, they are imposing their own contested territorial claims unilaterally on the ground in a manner which is highly destabilizing. So please don't think that somehow onus is on us. What has changed is that there's a new China. Today's China is a powerful China. It's the second largest economy in the world, second largest military in the world. Xi Jinping says repeatedly will not cede an inch of territory. So, their mindset has changed. They're not willing to make any concession. Moreover, they believe that when it comes to border issue, time is on their side. There's absolutely no hurry to resolve. So please don't think that border issue is not being resolved because of lack of effort on our part or somehow we are being casset. No, our negotiators are just defending our national interest. They should continue to do that. Coming to second, what was his question?
He's concerned that why this situation doesn't get better.
Yeah. Why situation doesn't get better?
Because maybe we don't have.
And also, what we heard from gentleman in the back, will China keep us pinned down in this situation? They'll be quite happy doing that. I think the only answer lies investing in our own capabilities, reducing the capability gap, then Chinese will be more inclined to find a new sort of modus vivendi, which will be little less stressful. It will remain stressful. So this is not something, which can be resolved by, what, sir, you referred to Russia, India, China kind of configuration. So it's not going to work. It is not going to in any way help problems, issues we have with China or with USA for that matter.
Just two lines, the question this lady asked. No, we do have certain strengths. One is, they're looking at a market where Chinese exports are under pressure from various tariffs and other things. That is one. Second, they also respect our military. I'll just give you a small anecdote. Once I was traveling to the airport in Beijing, the taxi driver started speaking. So when I was conversing, he says, you have a very good navy. I said, why do you say that? You have aircraft carrier from such and such a time, and they have been operating, you're very experienced, etc. So in the Chinese mind, the military, they're very shrewd watchers of whatever is happening around them. So they see the kind of wars that we have fought, Kargil, others, everything. So they do take note of these things and they do respect the military. So we have certain amount of leverages. Second thing about the questions which came up, please be under no tension for time. The moment you want to cut short the time to get a resolution, you will start compromising. No. Let it take as many years as it wants. We need to get what we want and we need to negotiate from that particular position.
Wonderful. We're going to take two more questions, but one question could come from this gentleman sitting here, Uma, who is an expert on external affairs. It'll be great to see what an expert on external affairs would ask the two very distinguished speakers here.
Okay.
And we will club in another question.
Please pass on the mic.
Please pass on the mic.
Please
Uma,
raise your hand,
can you just
sir.
raise your hand, please? And one more question.
एंड उसके बाद पीछे वहाँ सर काफ़ी समय से इंतज़ार कर रहे हैं, उन तक माइक पहुँचाएंगे.
Please.
Hi, I'm not an expert. I'm just a journalist, and I have a lot of focus on covering Indo-China relation for last 25 years. अशोक कांत जी से कई बार हमारी मुलाकात होती है MEA के कई फंक्शन में, तो हम पुल साइड जो बातचीत करते हैं उसमें उन्होंने उतना कुछ बताया नहीं जितना आज इस मंच से इन्होंने बताया हमें. तो पहली बात तो मैं जी BLF की मन से बताया इन्होंने. अभी आपने बहुत बातें की, आपने कहा पैटर्न की बात की, आपने डिटरेंस की बात की. 1999 में मुझे देमचौक मुझे थाकुन OP पे जाने का मौका मिला था, जहाँ से रिजैंगला और श्रीजैप का जो इलाका है मैंने देखा. जब करगिल वॉर चल रहा था उस समय चाइना ने उस मौके का फ़ायदा उठाकर जो अगर फिंगर 4 या फिंगर 8 की बात करें तो उस बीच में एक अलाइनमेंट बना लिया था, जिसको मैंने नंगी निगाह से देखा है वहाँ पे. फिर उन्होंने 20 साल वेट किया. जब कोरोना के टाइम में हमारी तरफ से पेट्रोल नहीं जा रही थी, तब उन्होंने जाके वहाँ पे ज़्यादा और अपने आप को फोर्टिफाइड किया. मेरे कहने का मतलब यह है कि क्या हम दूध का जला छाछ को भी फूंक फूंक कर पीने की नीति पे चल रहे हैं कि अगला वो मिस एडवेंचर इस तरह का कब करें, उसके लिए हम डिटरेंस हमारा तैयार है.
जी, थैंक यू.
Great. Second question.
लास्ट वहाँ पे पीछे सर, प्लीज़ आप हाथ खड़ा कर लीजिए, उन तक माइक पहुँचा दीजिए. And that's the last question, and we'll wrap the session after the answers.
So, as a layman, I want to ask, as we can see with the term Trump in the helm, the world is getting unipolar, and Russia entangled in the Ukraine war. So, do we see China flexing its muscles militarily, or any timeline which you can see? That is maybe everybody maybe wanted to know about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
आपने बात की कि चाइना को कैसे रोका जाए, ये जो प्रोबिंग उनका होता रहता है. और उसके पहले मैं आपने जो एक कमेंट किया था कि मैंने पुलिस साइड में ज़्यादा बात नहीं की. वहाँ एक्चुअली अमरीन ने वो मौका पहले नहीं दिया, तो मैं खुद उस मौके का फ़ायदा उठाना चाहूँगा. जैसा अमरीन ने कहा, जनरल नरसिम्हन और मैं, हम लोग काफ़ी लिखते हैं, और भी हाल में हमारी एक किताब भी आई है उसी पर ये सेशन बेस्ड है, डिकोडिंग चाइना हार्ड पर्सपेक्टिव्स फ्रॉम इंडिया। मैंने उसमें 73 पेज का एक चैप्टर लिखा है, उसको आप पढ़िए। उसमें ऐसी कोई चीज़ मैंने आज नहीं कही जो मैंने पब्लिक डोमेन में पहले नहीं कहा। तो ये एक तो चीज़ है। दूसरा जो आपने डेटरेंस की बात की, देखिए जनरल नरसिम्हन जरूर मुझसे सहमत होंगे कि हमें पता है कि चाइना कोशिश करता रहेगा कि कहाँ हमारा चिंक्स है, कहाँ वो घुस सकता है। तो वी कैन नेवर लेट गार्ड डाउन, एंड दिस इज़ नॉट ओनली इन वेस्टर्न सेक्टर, मिडिल सेक्टर में। मैं अभी देहरादून में था आर्मी, 3 दिन पहले आर्मी सेमिनार में वहाँ, जिसमें सब लोग थे, GOC सेंट्रल कमांड थे, सबसे बात हो रही थी। हमारे लोग बहुत तैयार हैं और उन्हें पता है कि चाइना कहीं आ सकता है। ईस्टर्न सेक्टर में वही चीज़ है। तो प्रोबिंग चलता रहेगा, लेकिन तैयारी भी हमारी चलती रहेगी और तैयारी बढ़ती जाएगी। तो ये मैं आश्वासन, मैं सरकार में नहीं हूँ, लेकिन मैं कहना चाहूँगा।
जी, आप कुछ
Just 2 lines, okay? On the Pankungsu thing that you mentioned. इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हमारी तरफ से भी बनाया जा रहा है बॉर्डर के एरिया के अंदर, वो जारी रहेगा। लेकिन उसी को रोकने के लिए तो वो टनल बोरिंग मशीन बंद किया था। तो चाइना भी कोशिश करेगा कि हम आगे ना बढ़ें इन चीज़ों के अंदर। तो हमारा कोशिश जारी रहेगा कि हमारा किस प्रकार का तैयारी करना चाहिए। हम कभी भी we will not let our guard down on any of the area across the land, not only in the western sector, northern sector, both. There is no way that you can trust anybody and say, okay, I'll leave this place vacant. No. The entire area has to be guarded, and that is the way we work. The second thing is about this US-China-Russia relationship that gentleman asked. The only answer I want to give in one line is that international relations are not permanent. There is no permanent friends in the international relationship. There are only permanent interests, and even that is coming under question with what is being happening now.
Yeah.
So these things will come, these things will go, but we need to concentrate on Viksit Bharat 2047. That will give us the voice.
Wonderful. Huh? It's not as gloomy as it appears. With these two gentlemen, you know there's a lot of hope. Right? Are you satisfied? आप लोग मुतमईन हैं? That's wonderful. We're quite hopeful. Now, the last question comes from Mr. Raghav Chandra.
So this is a question to Ambassador Kant. How far is India's relationship with China hyphenated with China's relationship with the US? And in a situation where, say for instance, in a hypothetical situation where China attacks Taiwan and the South China Seas become all that turbulent, which is not impossible, having seen Trump enter Venezuela by force, that China should want to do the same in Taiwan with some element of perceived legitimacy. Do you think that that would be the moment where India-China relationship can move towards a rapprochement?
Raghav, that's a very good question. Actually, you've asked 2 questions. Both are very, very important issues. In fact, when we talk to Chinese, and now for me it's track 2, track 1.5 discussions, we always tell them that don't keep making this mistake of looking at India through prism of your strategic contestation with USA. Then you're not giving us agency. And India is one country which follows independent foreign policy, so don't make that mistake. But they keep doing it. They are doing it, I referred to that earlier. Today, the level of their interest in sort of accommodating us, which was low to begin with, has become even lower because they think that we are in a difficult spot vis-a-vis USA. So that is being deployed against us. So this problem will continue to face. It is a triangular relationship, India, USA, China. We get more strength when China, USA was looking at India as a sort of counterbalance, strategic counterbalance to China. That situation changing, so it has become a bit of a problem for us. Coming to Taiwan issue, I feel that that moment, instead of providing an opportunity for rapprochement between India and China, will become a very difficult foreign policy moment for us, because we have very vital interests in Taiwan, not just bilaterally in terms of trade, etc. But any situation where China forcibly occupies Taiwan will completely change the geopolitical landscape of at least Western Pacific, if not Asia Pacific, to our disadvantage. So this is something we are aware of, and it will embolden China to take more action along India-China borders. How we do deal with that situation, to what extent we want to get involved, I'm sure we'll not get involved directly, militarily, but in terms of diplomatic articulation, I have no doubt we'll come out with a strong position. Possibility, if India-US relations return to an even keel, there might be support in other areas. We have foundational agreements with USA, but it's not going to provide an opening for rapprochement between India and China. This much is very clear to me.
Just one line on China-Taiwan, Mr. Raghav. See, people start comparing Russia, Ukraine, and other things with China-Taiwan. Please understand there's a Taiwan Strait in between, and that is going to be extremely difficult because it is going to be an amphibious operation in case you need to do that, and that is one of the toughest operations ever can be planned and conducted. So let us not forget and let us not compare other things with this. This is going to be far more difficult. There is a report of the US Department of War that has just come out. It clearly states where the capabilities of Chinese are. So you have issues there. When it comes politically, of course, that's a different call that we need to take. But militarily, it is still not a very easy option.
Thank you very much, both of you. Now, I'm going to take half a minute to sum it up. Okay,
Sure.
with my style of asking questions, if you will allow me. I'm definitely, you can employ me to be a negotiator because I would manage to do some things. So this is going to be the rapid fire format, and you have to respond only in either one line or one word. And there'll be 3 questions each.
Sure.
First question is to you. How do you think people will communicate in a perfect world? What would be?
So, Mike, please.
How do you think people will communicate in a perfect world as a military man?
Perfectly.
Good one. Okay, now once a diplomat is always a diplomat, but let's try. Some choices you have to make. Xi Jinping or Putin?
I will any day prefer Putin.
One line.
Putin.
Okay.
Putin.
Putin.
Because
Putin.
he's not a challenge for us.
Okay, Putin or Trump?
Putin.
Putin. Okay, good one. Now, the second question comes back to you. One comment that interests or disturbs you about this very famous film recently launched or released, Dhurandhar.
Sorry,
One comment, okay, that interests you or disappoints you as a military man about this film, Dhurandhar.
It is a cinematized version. It is a cinematized version.
Cinematized version.
Okay, so that is what?
That means it may not be actuals. It may be more
Make a note of
into a fiction, whatever.
Actually, for Indian Express, we should have reached out to you to do a review of this film. So now the last question is with Ambassador Kantha. One completely different and unique trait of a military man, a lieutenant general who's served there, and a diplomat who is dealing with China who was dealing with China in diplomacy. Completely opposite trait of a diplomat versus an army officer.
Well, I can say that a diplomat, no matter whatever I said, I think we are always looking for common space. How can we work together? Whereas their mandate is very different. I mean, their mandate is to defend our strength, our border, there's no margins, there's no flexibility there.
In one line, if you had to describe him, and one line if you had to describe, because they do a lot of talking together at not only India but international platforms. And we'll end with that.
Great guy.
I will use two words, great guy and scholar general.
Oh, what an amazing discussion.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it was just not my privilege, but everyone's, because we had one great guy on my left and a great guy and a scholar on the other. Thank you very much for sparing time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ambreen ji,
you.
for making this engaging. I believe we have enough headlines now. Thank you so much to Ambassador Ashok ji and Lieutenant General Narasimhan ji. एक बार जोरदार तालियां हो जाएं. मैं अभिलाष खांडेकर जी को मंच पे आमंत्रित करना चाहूंगा और उनसे निवेदन करूंगा कि वो अपने शुभ हाथों से हमारे गेस्ट और हमारी डिस्कशन का सम्मान करें.
The very famous book, Decoding China, is available in all stores, at Amazon, and here. Please buy your copies and get the copies signed.
Absolutely. It
And
was a
follow
pleasure
him.
listening to both of them, and I must say, Lieutenant General Narasimha ji का नाम जितना भारी है, उनकी आवाज़ भी उतनी ही भारी है. और wonderful bass voice. And amazing insights by Ambassador Ashok ji. And wonderfully curated by Ambreen ji. एक बार हमारे तीनों गेस्ट मेहमानों के लिए तालियां होनी चाहिए, please. That was an insightful session on the Indian and Chinese relationships. The next session, dear ladies and gentlemen, is titled as